Good afternoon, and I will call to order the March 14th meeting of the Minneapolis City Planning Commission. My name is Matt Brown. I serve as president of the commission, joined today by Commissioners Kronzer, Magrino, Lukey-Pierce, Weezy, Vreeland, and Rockwell. Our first item of business is to approve the actions from the February 22nd meeting. May I have a motion to approve those actions?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? And that motion carries. Next item of business is to go through the agenda. You can find hard copies of the agenda in the hallway. We will determine which items will be on consent, which we'll discuss, and which will be continued. So I'll start at the top of the agenda. Item number 1 is the Minnesota Stadium edition at 401, 424 Chicago Avenue, 701, 713, and 719 3rd Street South, and 700, 716, 728, and 701 4th Street South. That is a preliminary and final plat. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put that on the consent agenda. Item 2 is a street renaming, Chicago Avenue and Kirby Puckett Place between South 3rd Street and South 6th Street. We will discuss that item. Item 3 is Ryder Truck Rental Incorporated at 333 through 359 Hoover Street Northeast, 332 through 346 Delano Street Northeast, and 2524 Winter Street Northeast. That's a conditional use permit and a site plan review for a transportation business. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? That's item 3. Ryder Truck Rental. Okay, is anyone else here to speak on that item? If there's no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 4 is the Ken and Norm's Cooler extension at 4801 Chicago Avenue. We will continue that item to the March 28th meeting. Item 5 is 823 LLC at 823 15th Avenue Southeast. That's a variance and site plan review for a 10-unit apartment building. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 6 is Walgreens at 2640 through 2650 Hennepin Avenue South. It's a site plan review and minor subdivision for a new commercial building there. We will discuss item 6. Item 7 is the Augsburg College Hague for a Center for Science, Business, and Religion at 628 21st Avenue South, 2015 South 7th Street, 623 20th Avenue South, 2011 South 6th Street, and 606 21st Avenue South. Several applications for a new institutional building there. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 8 is the Krause-Anderson Block redevelopment at 501, 507, 515, and 523 South 8th Street, 502 and 518 South 9th Street, and 811 5th Avenue South. Conditional use permit, site plan review, and registered land survey for a new mixed-use development there. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. And item 9 is the 116 East Hennepin redevelopment at 112 East Hennepin Avenue. Several applications for a new mixed-use building there. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. So our agenda as amended is as follows. Items 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 9 will be on consent. We will discuss items 2 and 6, and item 4 will be continued to the March 28th meeting. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And that motion carries. Our next item of business is to consider item 4, which is to be continued to the March 28th meeting. May I have a motion to continue item 4? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? And that motion carries. We have no committee of the whole consent agenda today. So at this time, we'll move into the public hearing portion of the meeting. And at this time, I'll open the public hearing for the items on the consent agenda. Again, that's items 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 9. Is anyone wishing to speak on items 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, or 9? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. May I have a motion? We do have someone who wishes to speak. Okay, and that's item 2. We will discuss that item. And were you wishing to speak on one of those items? On number 2. Okay, we will discuss that item. So we'll get to that in a moment. If there's no one who wishes to speak on the items on the consent agenda, I will close the public hearing. And commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And that motion carries. Next, we'll move on to our 2 items for discussion. We'll begin with item 2, the street renaming. Commissioner Magrino, I know you had requested that we discuss this item. Is there a particular issue you'd like staff to discuss or question you had?
Just, I guess going over the findings in the staff report and whether or not those... Oh, sorry. Just going over the findings in the staff report, and a couple of those to me struck out as maybe, I guess I just disagreed with them, so I wanted to hear staff's rationale.
Sounds good. Ms. Dvorak.
Good afternoon, commissioners. This is a street naming request that was submitted by the Minnesota Vikings for a portion of Chicago Avenue and Kirby Puckett Place between 3rd Street South and 6th Street South. It's the area shown on the map. Currently, this portion of Chicago Avenue has 2 names, Kirby Puckett Place and Chicago. And what they're proposing is to rename this stretch for the 3 blocks from 3rd to 6th to Vikings Way. So they're not findings that we need to make, but there's criteria that we're asked to address when renaming a street. I won't go through all of them, as some of them are whether they're numerical or alphanumeric, but the ones that may want to be discussed start with finding or criteria number 4. Continuous streets should have the same name throughout the metropolitan area. As I had noted, this portion or a portion of what is proposed to be changed already has 2 names, and so CPED and Public Works find that changing the segment of the street to Vikings Way is reasonable because a portion of the street segment already deviates from the practice. Another criterion is that a street name should be changed only if there will be a public benefit that clearly outweighs the public confusion and costs that would be created by the name change. Changing the name of this segment of the street to Vikings Way will be adjacent to the future U.S. Bank Stadium that is currently under construction. And this is where the Minnesota Vikings will play football under a 30-year lease agreement with the MSFA. Criterion 8 is street names should be alphabetical or numerical sequence whenever practical. And the numerical sequence of the streets downtown has already been broken by the introduction of Portland Park and Chicago Avenue. Criterion 9 is that a street name should not uniquely identify a particular product, service, tenant, business, or living person. The proposed name of the street would identify the state of Minnesota's National Football League's team. CPED and Public Works staff finds that the Minnesota Vikings are a longstanding cultural and historical entity to the state of Minnesota. And then criterion 10 is that streets should generally be named after people, places, events, and things related to the city and citizens of Minneapolis. And we find that the Minnesota Vikings have been the state of Minnesota's National Football League's team since 1961. And as mentioned before, have signed a 30-year lease with the MSFA to play in the future U.S. Bank Stadium. So based on those criteria for street naming, we do recommend that you approve the petition to change the name of the street and forward that recommendation on to the City Council.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions? Commissioner Vreeland.
Yes, so I have questions about the same number 4, number 5, and number 9. With number 4, It is the Kirby Puckett Place is, again, there's streets that have been renamed, but it doesn't really change the name of the street. It's kind of a ceremonial thing. Is that the case for Kirby Puckett Place?
That is not the case. It actually has 2 official street names. And I'll just for the history of Chicago Avenue, in the original town of Minneapolis plat dating back to 1855, Chicago Avenue was actually called Ames Street. And then in 1873, Ames Street became 8th Avenue South. In 1949, 8th Avenue South became Chicago Avenue. And then in 1996, Kirby Puckett Place was added between 4th and 5th Street. And it is an official name. It was not commemorative.
Number 5, the public benefit. Again, that's, a matter of opinion.
Correct.
And number 9, I don't see how we can't say that it is a product and it is a tenant. So I don't know. I mean, the logic of that it being a product that people like or a well-known product doesn't seem to be indicated in the actual language of 9. So I'm curious about the logic of saying that somehow cultural and history in this category trump the fact that it's an actual product and an actual tenant.
And Commissioner Vreeland, did you have a specific question for staff? Or
is it a product and are they tenants?
I guess I would let the applicant speak to whether they're a tenant or not. I mean, they do have a lease with the U.S. Bank Stadium, but I guess I would ask the applicant to answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Sweezy and then Commissioner Lukey.
Yes, hi. Do you know, if you know, oh, thank you. If you know, I presume that the Vikings organization chose the name Vikings Way?
Correct.
Do you know if there were other candidates, or is that the only name that they talked about with you?
That was the only name that was the name that they submitted on the application form when they made the application to the city.
And do you know if there was a process by which other names were rejected, or?
I would save that question for the applicant.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Lukey Peter.
Yeah, hi, Hillary, on number 5, it says that it outweighs the cost and confusion. What is the cost of changing the name? And do we know, if we're being asked to weigh it?
Jeff Handeland from the City of Minneapolis Public Works Department is here. There is a cost to change, to manufacture the street names, and then for Public Works staff to change those out. And he could answer that question. There is one, so yes, I would let him answer that question.
Thanks, Hillary.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lukey Peer. I'm Jeff Hanland. I'm a principal professional engineer in the Department of Public Works. The cost to rename the street basically consists of, if we just look at removing the existing street name signs and putting up new street name signs, it's on the order of hundreds of dollars, and the applicant is responsible for paying those costs, the city's actual costs, and in this case, the applicant is aware of that and agreed to that.
So the cost for fabrication and installation and removal, I assume by city employees, is only hundreds of dollars? I would have thought it'd be more given what labor rates are these days. I mean, not significantly more, but I would imagine there's another zero after that somewhere, given what highway signs cost.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Lukey Peer, I will admit that the exact number is a little rusty in my mind, and I didn't bring that number. But
the Vikings would pay the actual cost of fabrication and labor behind all that?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Commissioner Kronzer and then Commissioner Bender.
I have a question about the extension of the request from 4th Street to 3rd Street. From 6th to 4th, it's kind of fronting the stadium. So 2 parts to this question. Why the extension from 4th to 3rd? And also, are there any addresses are properties addressed on what's currently Chicago between 4th and 3rd Streets?
And the applicant can speak to the extension between 3rd and 4th, but they do own the properties on each side of the block. Mr. Wolf owns these 2 parcels of land, and the MSFA owns the ramp that is currently under construction, or actually it's open now. As far as any properties that have addresses, yes, the Hennepin County Morgue does have an address on Chicago, and they are aware that their address would need to change as a result of the street name change.
Commissioner Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a change to the underlying street name, not a commemorative renaming.
Correct.
Could you talk about the difference between those 2 actions? Are there different criteria that an underlying street renaming has to meet that a commemorative one doesn't, for example?
I am not aware of the criteria for commemorative street naming, if it is the same or not, but I will defer to Jeff Handeland if he has an answer.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Bender, there is a council adopted policy that sets the criteria that was reviewed for the street name change application. In that applies, that was written for the purpose of official street name changes. Commemorative name changes, that is not what that was written for, and I believe have become more of a thing after that city council policy was adopted. So that could be up to future decision whether that criteria is applied with commemorative names.
And then my understanding of our policy here is that we don't want private businesses to change the names of streets in front of their business. So if this was a proposal for Target Way instead of Nicollet Avenue, or Wells Fargo Way instead of Chicago Avenue, would we expect to be recommending approval of this name change?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Bender, that's a good question. I'm not sure the answer to that question. In this case, we do have a street named Twins Way, and so as a question of the sports teams, it seems that I would probably expect that it'd be more likely to recommend approval because there's precedent. In the case of other businesses, that's a good question.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, Hillary, the Chicago Avenue name would be eliminated altogether. And I assume that would mean it would not be signed at the intersection of 4th Street and Chicago?
Correct. The street signs would be different in this section. They would say Vikings Way between 3rd and 6th.
Okay. Are there any further questions of staff? If there are none, I'll open the public hearing at this time. I'd like to ask the applicant to speak first, and maybe if you don't mind addressing the issues you've heard.
Good afternoon, Lester Bagley, Executive Vice President of the Minnesota Vikings. Thank you for the consideration for this application to change the street name to Vikings Way. And the reason for the request and why we would like to change the street name is to acknowledge the long-term iconic business, Minnesota Vikings. We were 32 years at the Metrodome, and we, as noted, we've made a long-term commitment to extend far into the future at this site. Vikings Way would also honor the tradition of the Minnesota Vikings and and also the local history. Minnesota's team since 1961 at this location, with a 2-year exception at TCF Bank Stadium since 1982. And as was noted by staff, there's also precedent established for the Twins. The business address of Target Field has been changed to Twins Way, and so it's a very similar or identical request to grant this request. And currently it is Kirby Puckett Place. That has been addressed. There's now a Kirby Puckett Place down near Target Field. So I can address a couple other issues that I've heard come up. The cost, to confirm that the Vikings will cover or reimburse the cost of this name change, and why extend it to that additional block and that to 3rd Street. And the request there is, as Ms. Dvorak showed, that there is a property owned by the Vikings on that street, and our intention is to eventually develop that property and to make it into a Viking ancillary a property that we would like to have the Vikings Way extended, that additional block. So those are my couple comments. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Are there any questions of the applicant? If there are none, Commissioner Sweezy.
I'll ask you the same question I asked. Obviously, the Vikings decided Vikings Way. Is that because of Twins Way, or?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was an additional question I meant to answer, Commissioner. There was not an external process, but it was an internal discussion about what's the best way to honor the Minnesota history and tradition of the Minnesota Vikings. And so it's consensus within the organization was to name it Vikings Way. I think, again, the precedent of Twins Way is also factored into that discussion.
All right. Any further questions? Commissioner Lupe here.
I actually have a question for staff about Twins Way. Is that an official street name, or is it an honorary one? And did it rename the street entirely, or was it like a duplicate name like Kirby Puckett Place is duplicate that's Chicago Avenue?
Thank you, Commissioners.
It was an official street name change.
So it's not synonymous with another street name or anything like that?
No.
Why don't I recall that coming before us?
Are there any other questions? If there are none, we can move on to some other speakers. Just can I see a show of hands? How many of you wish to speak on this item? Just a couple. All right, you can decide who goes first, and come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Captain Jack Sparrow. I'm a candidate for Minnesota Senate District 62. And
if you don't mind stating your address.
Yeah, 3522 Bloomington Avenue South, South Minneapolis. I think that we should not change the name of Chicago Avenue or Kirby Puckett Way to Vikings Way, because the Vikings have had a history going back thousands of years of murder, rape, pillaging, taking slaves. Yeah. The Vikings were in North America 500 years before Columbus. The city council voted to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. Why would we want to name anything after the Vikings, whose history goes back much further? We talked about the cost of changing the street signage and so on. What about the cost of maps? What about the cost of changing all the maps around the world to reflect the name? What about the confusion it would cause by people coming to into Chicago Avenue and finding Vikings Way? And maybe they don't know the reason for it, and could lead to people getting lost. Today, I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm also speaking for the Ward 9, Precinct 2, which unanimously passed a resolution suggesting that we not change any part of Chicago Avenue to Vikings Way. I met just a few hours ago with Councilmember Cano, who also signed on to this letter that I passed out called Vikings Way, No Way. Any questions?
All right. Are there any questions of the speaker? If there are none, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we have one more speaker, and please state your name and address for the record.
Commissioners, my name is Arlene Freed, 1109 Xerxes Avenue South. I'm a longtime Minneapolis resident, and I'm not opposed to the name change, but I think there should be contingency. The naming of Chicago Avenue to Vikings Way has significant value for the Vikings. It would be remiss for Minneapolis to acquiesce to the Vikings' request without getting something of value from Minneapolis in return. One example of something that would be of value for Minneapolis would be to ensure that the Commons is always publicly accessible, even on Vikings days. Another example of something that would be of value for Minneapolis would be to ensure a Viking-supported funding plan for the ongoing maintenance of the Commons. In closing, please do not ignore this great opportunity to benefit the city of Minneapolis and its taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? If there's no one, I'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, we just have one item to consider on the street name change. Are there any further questions? Would someone like to make a motion? Commissioner Magrino.
I will make a motion to deny the application for the street name change. And if I get a second, I'll elaborate a little bit on it.
Is there a second?
Second, and I'll elaborate after Magrino.
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Magrino.
Yeah, so I'll be pretty short here. I feel that this is pretty clear that it doesn't meet the criteria that are listed here. I mean, it isn't going to be a contiguous street right there. I mean, I get annoyed when LaSalle turns into Blaisdell, and this is an area with a lot more hotels in it. I mean, I see that there is a possibility for confusion there. And I also don't see exactly how it is similar to Twins Way. I mean, we've said that that's something that might be precedent here, but that's really just sort of a stub of a street that goes into a parking lot over by the Twins Stadium. So I don't know that that is something that I would consider. And it also does pretty clearly identify a particular product or business. I mean, the Vikings are a for-profit organization, and I don't see why the city needs to give up a piece of the Commons here, not the Commons, the park, but sort of the Commons. It's a resource the city has. It's a street, and we're going to rename it because someone doesn't like that the Bears play there. I don't see that that's a compelling argument.
Commissioner Magrino, or excuse me, Commissioner Rockwell.
The other one. I just wanted to address a couple of the criteria. I agree with Commissioner Magrino that there are, I think, a few points where this just simply doesn't fit the criteria. Criteria number 5, that a street should be name should be changed if there be a public benefit that clearly outweighs the public confusion. I think, as indicated earlier, the countless streets in the city could be named after firms, banks, other businesses. We're creating a slippery policy slope with this. We allow business names to be displayed in public. We allow them to be displayed on the buildings. And the Vikings decided to sell the naming rights, which is their prerogative, but that was giving up the right of public display of their name. It does not need to be compensated with City of Minneapolis advertising space. In terms of public benefit, streets are the essence of public realm and city identity. Mission Street in San Francisco, the Bowery in New York, Champs-Élysées in Paris, you name it. Streets create a city. They reflect neighborhoods in the city at large, rather than potentially transient businesses. I'd also like to talk about criteria number 9. Street should not uniquely identify a particular product, service, tenant, business, or living person. As has been stated a couple of times, this would identify a particular service or business, or tenant or business, sorry. Vikings, in their little rationale document that they submitted, it admitted as much. They qualified the business part by referring to themselves as an iconic business, so we'll give them that. The authors of the rationale also stated that precedent had been established in renaming the street after businesses, Twins Way. We're not legally bound. The Commission's not legally bound by its prior decisions. And this body's decisions, right or wrong, and I think that was wrong, do not carry precedential value. Finally, number 10, proposed names should meet one of the following applicable criteria: to commemorate local history, places, events, or culture, or to strengthen neighborhood identity. Again, the Vikings are a tenant in the business. While they've played in Minnesota since the 1960s, they originally played in Bloomington, not Minneapolis. They moved to Minneapolis then. In recent years, were bought by New Jersey residents who then hoped to move the team to Arden Hills and indicated they might move it out of the state altogether. The team and the Sports Authority have used the stadium to get $500 million in taxpayer contributions, and the Sports Authority and team have detracted, I would argue, from the neighborhood with deals, non-neighborly deals related to the use of the Commons Park and the pedestrian bridge. And finally, I think this was tongue-in-cheek, but I'm going to address it anyway. I wish to briefly address a concern about the current street name, Chicago Avenue, and its association with a rival team. First, it's worth noting that the Bears did not change Michigan Avenue, which runs near Soldiers Field, to Bears Way, although the Lions are also an NFC North competitor. Nor did the Bears complain in 2015 when the Field Museum, which lies immediately adjacent to Soldiers Field, hosted the traveling Vikings exhibit for nearly all of 2015. Are the Vikings more afraid of their competitors than the Bears? I hope for the future scoreboard that the Vikings are not cowed by a rival's name, for if they are, we should expect a dismal record for the Vikings in away games, where the Vikings will always be surrounded by opponents' logos, mascots, and team names. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Lukey-Peer and then Commissioner Kronzer.
A hard act to follow. Okay. I just wanted to briefly, although I agree with my colleagues, I just wanted to touch on just a couple things tied to a few of the criteria as well. I think particularly criteria number 4, I think that actually speaks to a larger issue that our Planning Commission has addressed numerous times in the many years I've been on it, which is healing the grid. And I think keeping a contiguous street name throughout, it may have been Kirby Puckett Place, but it was / Chicago Avenue. I think that Twinsway is different. It has a finite run. It has a beginning and an end, and it's Twinsway the whole way. Having it switch from Chicago to Vikings Way to Chicago is definitely not continuous and definitely breaks it up and is not part of healing the grid, which you've been trying to do for over 2 decades now in the city. I will hold off on my critique of criteria number 5 about the benefits outweighing the cost. I think the costs are actually a lot larger, and I don't just mean the cost of actually installing signage and whatnot, but I think a good point was brought up about what are the costs of naming rights and why are we willing to forego ours at a cost of to what benefit? I don't see any benefit to the public, actually. And we actually aren't here to benefit businesses. We're here to benefit the greater public good, and I don't see how this would benefit them. It's not like you can't see the stadium from anywhere in the city. So it's not like no one's going to be able to find it. And lastly, I think that number 9 is a really big sticking point for me. They are a tenant, they are a business. And quite frankly, Target's been in business longer than they have. And so if we are willing to give naming rights to the Vikings, Target was founded in 1960. So are we going to be renaming Nicollet Mall? And then the other question is what happens for 4th Street and 6th Street and 11th Avenue, since the stadium kind of takes up all that whole area? Are we renaming 3 other streets in the future too? Maybe Vikings Place, Vikings Drive, Vikings Street? I don't know. It seems like a really slippery slope once we've kind of opened that Pandora's box. And while I can see that an attempt isn't made at distinguishing Twinsway as a precedent, to me it seems like a very different animal indeed, because it's been outlined and defined differently than this one would be. This one seems rather an outlier in the situation, and I wonder where this will lead 10 years down the road if we open these floodgates now. So with that, I will be supporting the recommendation to deny the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Kronzer.
Thank you, President Brown. I just want to talk about the wayfinding aspect of this for a minute. I could understand if the request is from 6th to 4th. Once we start going to 3rd, why not go to Washington? And I mean, people are going to be crossing town on Chicago, or even crossing the 3rd and 4th, which are one-way pairs. The wayfinding aspect of this becomes pretty problematic in my mind. And just a piece on Target Way. Sorry, not Target Way. You guys are getting me. Twinsway. Twinsway was actually former 3rd Avenue North, which was an orphan section of the road when the stadium was built. So it actually needed a new name. Thank you.
All right. Is there any further discussion? I'll just add, from a planning standpoint, I would have some concerns as well, just because Chicago Avenue is considered a commercial corridor in the comprehensive plan, a street where we want to channel new development, and certainly that's a part of the city that is very rapidly transforming. And I think to the north of 4th Street and to the south 5th Street, we have some pretty prime development opportunities. So I do also have some concerns about the continuity. I would agree with Commissioner Kronzer that if we're looking at a smaller section of the street, I would have fewer concerns, or maybe a dual street name, but losing the Chicago Avenue name altogether is a bit of a concern. So if there's no further discussion, we have a motion on the table to deny the street name change. In that case, clerk, please call the roll.
Freeland.
Aye.
Sweezy.
Aye.
Rockwell.
Aye.
Magrino.
Aye.
Lipke Pier.
Aye.
Franzer.
Aye.
Gagnon.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
And that motion carries. Thank you. That concludes our discussion on that item. Our next item for discussion is item 6, the Walgreens, 2640 Hennepin Avenue. And staff is Ms. Helene.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The application before you is a minor subdivision and site plan review for a new Walgreens at the corner of 27th Street West and Hennepin Avenue South. The addresses are 2640 to 2650 Hennepin Avenue, outlined here in bold. The applications include a minor subdivision to adjust the common lot line between the two properties shown here. So the lot line would move slightly to the north right up to the First Tech building, and that building would stay as is. And then the new parcel at the corner would become the home of a Walgreens. Here's a general site layout. So again, the only application here for the building is an application for site plan review. The applicant is proposing the building at the corner with a drive-through on the west side here. You can't see where I'm pointing. Drive-through on the west side. So there would be a curb cut onto Hennepin, find a better site plan, and a curb cut onto 27th to allow traffic to circulate through the site. The entrance is here at the corner of the parking lot and Hennepin. As far as alternative compliance on the site plan here, the only thing that the applicant is requesting alternative compliance for is a small portion of the landscaped yard along Hennepin. That's really just right here where the bike racks are shown in the landscaped yard, and staff is actually recommending that those be relocated and the landscaping be extended. And then there's another piece of alternative compliance that's actually recommended by staff. The applicant was proposing to extend an existing 7.5-foot fence along the west property line here. Right where I'm showing in this location is where the fence would be extended. There's an existing brick garage right on the property line on the adjacent property. And so putting a solid wood fence up against a brick garage didn't really add any benefit as far as screening goes, and would have created maintenance issues for both the fence and the garage. So we're recommending that they just do the plantings that are shown here, and that we grant alternative compliance for the 90% opacity and, or excuse me, 95% opacity and 6 feet in height on the screening. As far as the general building layout goes here, you can see the entrance vestibule. This needs to be flipped. So this would be Hennepin here, 27th here. So you would walk in here. They're not proposing to block any of the windows, so there would be open corridors along the streets and along the parking lot. The drive-through is located back here. This is actually a mezzanine level that stacks in the corner. Here are the elevations. So as far as building design alternative compliance, they're asking for alternative compliance on windows on the west elevation, which is the one second from the bottom there that looks mostly blank. That's where the drive-through is located. So the pharmacy is in that area, and then they have their back of house loading and receiving in that location. Due to concerns with security for the pharmacy, we're recommending that they do clear story windows back there, both to break up the blank wall and as an alternative for the glazing requirement. Otherwise, window requirements are exceeded on the remaining elevations. The only other thing, technically, because this first floor or single story building exceeds 20 feet in height, they technically have a second story per the zoning code definition of height. It's not a truly functioning second story, so there are no windows up there. So as a practicality, we need to go through the alternative compliance procedure on that, but staff is recommending that the alternative compliance be granted. So here again, just a quick shot at the building. So the applications before you are the site plan review and the minor subdivision. Understanding as we went through the findings for whether or not this is consistent with the comp plan. Hennepin Avenue is a commercial corridor in this location. We do have policies recommending a minimum height of 2 stories on commercial corridors, but as of right now, we've been through this before, there is no policy or no ordinance requiring that they build a 2-story building. There's also nothing here that prohibits the drive-through. So this is not in a pedestrian-oriented overlay district. It's actually on a commercial corridor where we do allow for auto-oriented uses like this. Of course, this is a very visible corner and a very prominent site. We do have language that's been introduced by council that is going to look at how we regulate drive-throughs in the future and potentially extending the pedestrian-oriented overlay district. But for now, this is allowed. So with that, I can stand for any questions.
Commissioners, are there any questions of staff? Commissioner Rockwell.
Brief question. So looking at the, we've got a few comments in our packet here, letters.
Yes, sorry, I should have touched on that.
Oh, that's
yes, right. East Isles did send in a letter that's in your supplemental packet recommending denial of the project.
And there are a few emails in the back here, and a number of the, I would say many of these address the concerns about the suburban feel of this building.
Yes.
Have there been discussions, whether in community, maybe this is something for people who are here to testify can discuss, but discussions of what would make this less suburban feeling?
Staff has certainly had those discussions with the applicant. Our initial conversation with the applicant on a project like this is, can you put this in a multi-story building? Can you put it on the ground floor? Can you hide the drive-through any better? That's a conversation that we have with Walgreens frequently. And the only 2-story building they've ever done is the one on West Broadway, where that was a requirement. So they understand that while that's something that we would like to see and that we want more density and more intense development here, it's not required. And certainly, I believe their conversations with the neighborhood reflected that as well.
Commissioner Kronzer.
I have just 2 questions. Can you tell me why the entrance is not at the corner of 27th and Hennepin? And then second question is, can you just restate how this is defined as a 2-story building?
Yes. So on the entrance piece, this is probably the best way to look at it. So we did look at whether or not to require the entrance to be moved to the corner. The primary reason why we didn't do that is because of the location of the bus shelter at the corner. So there is an existing bus shelter. I don't know, maybe I have a better picture of that. That would be right in front of where that entrance would be located. So it's something we considered, but because the entrance is already facing the street, which is the requirement in site plan review, they're technically meeting the requirement. We also looked at whether or not it would make sense to move the entrance into the center of the building where it would be centered on Hennepin, but not at the corner, so not interfering with the shelter. We did recommend that they look at that in the text of the report, but didn't require it as a condition of approval. Primarily in this case, because this is a corner development, while that would make it more pedestrian friendly, if this were mid-block, then that would get traffic moving up and down the street and get pedestrian traffic, activating other businesses. In this case, it's at the corner, and as you turn the corner, it goes residential. So in this case, there didn't seem to be as much added benefit as there sometimes is in moving the entrance to the corner.
Then the rationale for it being 2 stories.
So per the zoning code definition of height, the first floor can be up to 20 feet, and anything above that is technically a second floor. So the overall height of this building is escaping me at the moment, but it's more than 20 feet.
I believe it's 26.
Thank you. So that 6 feet above the first 20 is technically a
So there's
second
no
story.
actual second floor to this building,
There's only a small mezzanine in the northwest corner of the building.
which I don't believe counts as a second floor as required in the building code.
We would not give them credit for a second floor here, but we do count the mezzanine floor area.
Okay, are there any further questions of staff? If there are none, I'll open the public hearing on this item. I'd like to ask the applicant to speak first. And please state your name and address for the record.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Marcy Westlock. I'm with Alon Design Lab. I'm a civil engineer representing the property owner at Roosha. So as Kimberly discussed, we're proposing the single-use Walgreens It's going to take down the Road OSHA as well as one other building. Along with that, we'll be reducing one of the curb cuts on Hennepin, maintaining, and it'll be moved further away from the intersection. We're maintaining both access points to alleviate traffic movements through the property. We did meet with the neighborhood association on February 16th, and we heard what they had to say, and they had several concerns. We have since been in discussions with Kimberly, have added some few things to the plan, and curbing and the PDR comments, including restricting left out access onto Hennepin, restricting access into the neighborhood, so no right turn on 27th. We're doing those with signage. In addition, at the Hennepin cut, we did add a pedestrian warning sign to alert drivers to that. The bike rack, we are going to accommodate that. We're going to move that into a parking stall closer to the entry and give back that space for the landscape. And then also the modified fence, we are taking that out as well to accommodate the neighbor's maintenance issue. And again, we did accommodate some clear story windows on that west side face. I also just wanted to mention this is less than an acre property, but we are instilling stormwater management. We are removing TSS and some other requirements that the city usually asks for in parcels that are over an acre to improve some of the downstream impacts at the lakes as well. There was a question from Commissioner Rockwell on the suburban feel to the building. We have been in ongoing discussions with the neighborhood association as well as our architect to try to come up with some additional schemes, as well as the property owner. It's had many revisions, but we're still open to discuss that and see if there's a compromise that can be made, certainly. Any other questions?
All right. Are there any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Vreeland.
Yes, I took some pictures today of Walgreens. It's a very new Walgreens in the Highland neighborhood in St. Paul. And I'm curious as to whether St. Paul has a much better way of ensuring that buildings in an urban environment look like an urban environment. It's got crown molding, it's got dentals, it's 2 stories, although I think the second story is a faux second story. It's got windows, but I don't see anything behind the windows. But it fits in an urban environment so well. It's got, mostly brick with the glass. I mean, it looks much better than the building that I'm seeing proposed. Are you familiar with the architect or?
Well, I'm familiar with the building itself. In fact, it's come across my desk, and we were in discussions with the architect and the property owner.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat yourself? The door was.
Certainly. I have seen that building. In fact, we have several emails from it, pictures of it. We're in discussions with the architect currently to see if that can be accommodated with the property owner and what's being developed there. But yes, we are aware. And in fact, I believe that was part of the neighborhood discussion with the developer, that building specifically, and fitting in with the other brownstones in the neighborhood. So it's being looked at.
I mean, and when you look at the small area plan, the thing that is most requested in the small area plan is the eventual change of the look of that street to be more integrated, to be more urban and less suburban. So again, it's certainly the neighborhood's desire to, as we change and develop new buildings, to head in a particular direction rather than go back to what we don't want. Thank you.
Commissioner Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I had a similar question, which was, why are you building a building that the neighborhood doesn't want here? And what it's doing is it's forcing us now to change our regulations to become much more prescriptive about architecture. So we can do that. We can ban drive-throughs, we can require buildings to be 2, 3, 4 stories, but the more we start adding these restrictions and regulations, it becomes more prescriptive. And it would be nice if we could, have major companies that have huge presence in our city be more responsive to what the neighborhood would like to see. And we know you can do great things. We see examples from Illinois of geothermal energy and wind-powered Walgreens and all these things. And so I think we're all left wondering, why are we getting something so much worse here in Minneapolis? Obviously, we need to change our laws. But barring that, in the interim, I guess I don't understand why we're getting such a suburban style store in this very urban neighborhood. Don't you want to appeal So the people who've chosen to live in the city, who love where they live, who want it to be a walkable pedestrian place, isn't that good for your business?
Like, I can't entirely speak for Walgreens, but I can speak for the property owner and the back and forth that they have gone through to cite this. There's been multiple discussions that I've been involved with this over a year, just doing some conceptual planning, and involved a lot of the Green Mill property, all of the Green Mill property at one point, but trying to promote a multi-use, multi-story building, both on the Walgreens site and the Green Mill, and then there was many iterations of that. At the end of the day, it ended up not being viable with Walgreens and the property owner. As a member of the industry, however, I will say that we do care very deeply for how I used to live in that neighborhood right across the street, kitty corner. So I can say that we are still in discussions with the architecture itself and trying to make it more accommodating and aesthetically pleasing for that matter.
All right. So are there any further questions of the applicant? If there are none, we can continue with the public hearing and move on to some other speakers. How many of you wish to speak on this item? So a few of you. You can decide who goes first and come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
All right, thank you, President Brown, members of the Plan Commission. My name is Andrew Degerstrom. I'm the president of the East Dallas Residents Association. Our address is 2751 Hennepin Avenue, South Box 294. So since this project was first announced back in January, based off of emails I've gotten from neighborhood residents, discussions on Nextdoor and other social media platforms, and discussions in person at meetings, this project has received nearly immediate and universal opposition from residents in the neighborhood. There are several reasons for the opposition. Some folks are upset that OSHA is closing. Others are upset about traffic issues as a result of cars coming out of the drive-thru and turning on the 27th Street. A lot of people are upset about the contemporary or suburban look style of the building. And that front, our zoning committee did share a lot of those same concerns. In fact, two representatives of our zoning committee, our chair and vice chair. Our chair is actually in attendance. They met twice with the developer, which resulted in some changes to the facade. So we do appreciate that. But most importantly, residents are upset about the striking lack of density of this project. The site sits along a high-frequency transit corridor. It's located in one of the busiest commercial corridors and highest density neighborhoods of the city outside of downtown. Yeah, all we're getting is a single-story, single-use commercial building with a drive-through and surface parking. If we look at the Uptown Small Area Plan, the future land use map identifies this location as mixed use with a height of between 2 and 4 stories. Since this proposal does not comply with the Uptown Small Area Plan because it does not comply with the future land use, the East Dallas Residents Association opposes this project. A lot of residents are frustrated that the Uptown Small Area Plan is not being enforced and want to know why. The answer is that at the end of the day, the Uptown Small Area Plan is only a policy document and not a regulatory document. For regulatory enforcement, we have to look to the zoning code. This location is zoned C2. The proposed use, including the drive-through, is permitted in the C2 district. Also, there is no minimum FAR standard that would require greater density. So how do we update the zoning code to reinforce the policies of the Uptown Small Area Plan and prevent low-density projects like this from happening in the future? We believe the answer is minimum FAR. Therefore, the East Dallas Residents Association supports current efforts to expand the pedestrian-oriented overlay along Hennepin Avenue, and we recommend that a minimum FAR requirement be added to the PO overlay. And then finally, just speaking for myself and not as a representative of the Neighborhood Association, because this issue we don't have an official position on, although we had many conversations about it. I want to touch on Commissioner Rockwell's comments about the entrance. I do feel that the entrance should be at the corner. If you look at this building, it's at a corner, and to have the entrance at the other side of the building, not only it's visually confusing, but it shows, in my opinion, that Walgreens values convenience for the customers who drive over practicing good urban design. So, like I said, those comments are my own personal view and not necessarily view of the Neighborhood Association. And so with that, once again, the East Isles Residents Association opposes this project and also supports ongoing efforts to expand the PO overlay and recommends that minimum FAR be established in the PO overlay. Thank you, Mr. President and Commissioners, for your time tonight.
Right, thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? If there are none, we can move on to the next speaker. And please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
I'm David Bryan from 2512 Euclid Place. I'm the head of the East Isles Zoning Committee. I'd just like to speak to what Mr. Vreeland brought up a minute ago about the appearance of the building. I mean, what to us the most important thing is that we would like to see a multi-story, multi-use building here, which we may not get that. Seeing that we may not get it, talking about the appearance of the building we have, the representatives from the Walgreens and the developer met with us, and we did talk about the appearance of this building. And we suggested to them that, like the Highland Park store, this building have more brick on it, specifically that that the tower be fully brick and that the top of the tower wouldn't be such a modern cap. It would be more like a cornice cap with a more traditional style. And so I'm just expressing my hope that that if we don't get the multi-story building, that we could possibly get a more traditional looking building here with more brick on it. I think that would help. Thank you.
Thank you. And next speaker, please state your name and address.
My name is Peter Mason. I'm a resident of East Isles, also a board member on the East Isles Association, and also recently on the zoning committee. I'm at 2513 Irving Avenue. The main thing is going to remember that council member Bender said a moment ago about discussions with the neighborhood and trying to make this better. Apparently this has been going on for a year and a half, 2 years, that they've been planning this particular project, but it was only brought to the actual neighborhood intention less than 2 months ago. We've had discussions since it finally was brought to our attention, and they've been somewhat productive, somewhat not, but we would ask, I personally would ask for this to be continued to allow those discussions, not them to have be rushed like they have been with our zoning committee. The drive-through, by their very own traffic projections, would have 1 to 2 cars a day in their drive-through. That's one thing we very much oppose. Additionally, the entrance behind a bus stop is actually a very logical entrance. 1 block away at the Uptown Diner, they have that exact same layout, and the entrance is at the corner, and the surrounding area is with the parking. These are discussions we are trying to continue to have outside of some of the more cosmetics things with the actual building. And so for that, beyond going into the Uptown Small Area Plan, the expansion of the pedestrian overlay district that has been proposed, the potential drive-through ban that may happen, I would ask that this be continued to allow these discussions to continue between the neighborhood association and the developer, to allow that just for maybe a couple of months to continue, because we're on a timeline that was not created by us, but created by the developer, by the applicant, and to allow those discussions to continue. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak, or Commissioner Luke-Pierre, did you have a question?
Well, I just had a question for perhaps Jason could ask about what the calendar and what the clock's looking like.
Yeah, maybe you could clarify where we're at in the 60-day review period. Kimberly or Jason?
Commissioners, the end of the 60-day review period is, looks like it's mid-April, and of course we have the ability to continue that an additional 60 days. So we'd be looking at June, keeping in mind that that has to accommodate any potential appeals. So there would be some ability to continue the project, but certainly not a couple of months.
So if we opted to continue it, what would be the latest date we could continue that to? And I can give you a minute if you'd like. Otherwise, we can maybe move on to some other questions. So maybe I should ask first, is there anyone else who would like to speak on this? And if there's no one, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, are there any other questions or comments? Commissioner Vreeland.
Yes. We have briefly discussed drive-throughs at Committee of the Whole, and I think that this is a very different kind of drive-through than McDonald's or Arby's. And there's a new Walgreens in my neighborhood that has a drive-through, and I'm sure there's a variety of opinions about this, but I would not immediately discard the idea that drive-throughs are not appropriate in an urban environment. Again, with sick people and folks that have handicap stickers, that it would be a lot easier. It seems like a fairly, again, I'm concerned with traffic problems, as are my colleagues, but I think having drive-through pharmacies can be of great benefit. So as we pursue this issue, I know globally there's a larger question, so I just would like to have some more conversations about the drive-through at some point.
Okay. And that is more of a policy matter, and I know that drive-through issue is on the staff's work plan for this year, so I'm sure we'll
But
have
that
some
is the basic reason why we're
conversations
discussing
about
it
that in the
today.
future. Well, today we're discussing this particular application. I'm sure we'll have a broader policy discussion in the future. Commissioner Magrino, or is it Commissioner Kronzer? Commissioner Gagnon.
Yeah, okay. So to the small area plan point, so now we're going to go through a comprehensive plan review to try to bring zoning codes into more alignment with all these other small plans that we've created throughout the city. And so where does that fit in this? I mean, if we'd already done the comp plan, more than likely we would be asking for more height in that area in the zoning codes, right? So I feel pretty strongly about we fail to define how we value small area plans or not. So we go through a process and then we ignore them when it's convenient and we enforce them when it's convenient. So I don't know. I would agree that this needs more height. You know, I go to DC a lot, go to Chicago a lot. You walk by a Walgreens, don't even know it's a Walgreens. So there are ways to do this in an urban environment. And I'm not opposed to the drive-through for some of the same reasons mentioned. But I think this looks like a Edina. So, okay, Edina. Nothing wrong with Edina, but we don't live in Edina. What's Medina? Is that a city? Oh, sorry, Medina.
I don't know, Mr. Wittenberg, if you have anything to add to that. And I do know it is often a little bit of a concern that we do go through these planning processes, and oftentimes we're kind of stuck with the zoning districts we have, and it can be difficult to implement every policy directly.
Sure, Commissioners. In small area plans, some policies are aspirational, others are more sort of quasi-mandatory in nature. So it's incumbent upon the city to decide which aspects of a small area plan are going to be made into regulation, and that will be most immediately addressed through the study that staff will do to examine expanding the pedestrian-oriented overlay district in this area, which could include things like minimum number of stories and/or minimum floor area ratio. And then, of course, we've got the broader comprehensive plan revision coming up too, and that has implications for zoning code revisions as well.
All right. And Commissioner Magrino or Commissioner Kronzer, did you have?
They're splitting, I think. Yeah, I just wanted to make a general comment before we get into motions that this is funny because it's sort of the opposite situation from the Uptown Hotel proposal that we just saw a couple weeks ago, but sort of the same underlying issue. So we have neighbors that are showing up that are saying that the neighborhood is opposed to something, and the small area plan doesn't say that you could do something, but the underlying zoning says that you can. And so I'm pretty wary of being inconsistent with decisions that I know I've made in the past. People show up to a meeting and say that they don't want something that's not really legal basis for the commission to deny an application. And so I would really urge that we work on reforming our zoning code a little bit, that we have some things that were introduced shortly after this application got in that would prevent it from happening again. But instead of being so reactive to these things as they come up, I hope that we can avoid it in the future.
All right. Commissioner Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a really helpful discussion and one that's good to have. I mean, it's clear that our policies are lacking here. We don't have the FAR minimums that we should on this corridor. There has been a long discussion about how we use pedestrian-oriented overlay districts. Part of the reason that we haven't extended them to more areas in my discussions with staff is because it includes things like not allowing drive-throughs or other auto-oriented uses. And so those are the tools that we have. So I guess the greater point I was trying to make is when we have developers that are not willing to make, the kinds of compromises with the neighbors that the hotel proposer did actually significantly reduce the height of their original proposal, using that as an example. And there are many other examples in the city where people have proposed things that have been really out of character with what the community wants to see. And of course, we have to weigh, who represents the community and is there division, and often there is. But, in my discussions with my own constituents who are just on the other side of Hennepin Avenue, as well as Councilmember Goodman's, it seems to me that pretty universally people want to see something that is more in keeping with the urban environment of our neighborhoods than this. And it's unfortunate to see, again, a company that we know has many locations across the city that provides a great service to many of our neighborhoods being totally unwilling to design something that fits into our community. And we don't have the regulations to require it. I think that we can require some things. I think we can require the door to be in the appropriate place, but that's really just a start to what's wrong with the architecture of this building. So, I guess I would urge the applicant to rethink this again and, to say, what does it look like to be in a city? And we have to ask nicely. I mean, because our regulations don't allow us to do more, really, I think. I mean, I don't know if other commissioners have creative ideas about things that we could require to improve this architecture. But certainly we can't require it to be 2 stories, for example. So I think it's unfortunate, but reality of where our regulations are at. But again, just one last time to say, I wish that this applicant would be more willing to work with folks to get to a design that everyone could be happy with and proud of and welcome to the community.
Okay, and Mr. Wittenberg has informed me we would have the ability to continue this application 2 cycles to the April 11th meeting if there is interest in doing that. Is there any further discussion, or would someone like to make a motion? All right, we have a motion to continue this item to the April 11th meeting. Is there a second? A motion and a second. Any further discussion on that motion? Commissioner Rockwell.
I just want to touch on a couple things to inform the period between now and April 11th. I think we don't in part have design guidelines in this city because that's a heavy hand and it clamps down on creative architecture, but it also allows for architecture that is uninspired. But I do believe I do have a creative way for us to regulate the design of this, and I'm a lawyer and don't want to do this. But I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of what I will do on the 11th if we don't see a better design. And then you can decide whether I have any basis and authority. So there's alternate compliance required here to reduce the percent of windows on the first story and on the second story. And the alternate compliance may be granted if, and I quote Ordinance 530.80, the alternative meets the intent of the chapter and the site plan includes amenities or improvements that address any adverse effects of the alternative. Site amenities may include architectural enhancements and design which is similar in form, scale, and materials to existing structures on the site and surrounding development. And then there's also a section that says proposed alternatives consistent with applicable development plans or development objectives. So that actually gives us some latitude to talk about the design here, because the ordinance says that in order to grant alternative compliance, there need to be concessions made on architectural enhancements, design that fit with development objectives. So we have a tool. The development objectives are outlined in Chapter 10 of the Comprehensive Plan, Page 14, commercial. This is in the urban design section. I'm not good with computers, so I have everything printed out. Box retails can have a place in an urban environment as long as their design adheres to urban principles. This then goes on to strongly suggest adaptive reuse of existing structures or new construction of multi-level, multi-use buildings with structured underground parking. This is a suggestion. This is not in the zoning code, as has been pointed out. Traditional big box retailers should gain a foothold in the urban market without imposing a suburban model. Then in policy 10.11.2 says ensure that new commercial developments maximize compatibility with surrounding neighborhoods. So in light of these development objectives, the motion that I was going to propose, and hope I don't have to propose, on the 11th is just talking about some of the features of the neighborhood. So, you know, in order to grant alternate compliance, to inset windows from the brick to eliminate a completely flat frontage, to provide awnings over windows along Hennepin Avenue, to provide a varied roof line around the full building, and or provide a basic cornice or cap at the roof line. And as part of this, either remove or make more interesting the suburban style tower and hat or cap over the entrance. And 4, provide brick detailing or metal elements in the several feet below the roof line. So those are just the bullet points there. But each of these has, each of these exist within 2 or 3 blocks of this site, and each element exists in a Walgreens. So the inset windows, go take a look at 2819 Hennepin, or look at the Walgreens in Wayzata. The awnings, go look at the entire block lengths on 2700 to 2800 block of Hennepin, or look at the Walgreens on Central Avenue in Northeast Minneapolis. The top of the building. No neighborhood buildings have these suburban hat things. Again, lawyer, not architect. Most have cornices or caps. Green Mill has a varied roof line. And then in terms of the entrance, it's actually the Chipotle is okay as an entrance. It's got kind of a weird metal thing, but it's distinctive. There's an Evanston, Illinois Walgreens at Chicago and Keeney, which has a pretty cool entrance as well. And in terms of the detailing, to the northwest corner of Hennepin and 28th provides an example of colored brick detailing. 2609 Hennepin provides some nice examples of brick relief. And then in terms of Walgreens precedent, there's the coolest Walgreens ever in Honolulu, which has some pretty intense architecture. And then more conservatively, there's some brickwork above in that kind of dead zone below the roof at 27th and National in Milwaukee. So all of these are possible on a Walgreens, and all of these are a part of the neighborhood character. I don't feel like I'm qualified to make these kinds of decisions because I am not trained in building design, and I like the feel of a city, but don't want to have to design it. But if this still looks as uninspired as it does on the 11th, I think this is a tool that the commission should use, and I will propose we use it if necessary. You know, and I will echo and leave to my colleagues' comments my disappointment over the single story and drive-through and all that, but I don't think we have a tool for that. So, you know, that's kind of a good neighbor thing, which it doesn't look like we're going to get, which I'm very disappointed by, but without the legal tool at this point, that's what we've got.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Magrino, then Commissioner Kronzer.
Thank you. I was just going to make a general point. I mean, I guess I don't oppose continuing this another month here, but I guess I would be pretty surprised if they came back with a 6-story building. I mean, there's sort of I don't think people are really as upset about the drive-through component of this as that it's a one-story building on Hennepin Avenue. But like I said earlier, they're allowed to build a one-story building on Hennepin Avenue. And, it's sort of funny putting yourself in the mind of whoever's selling this property. They can make money building one-story Walgreens. They could also make money building a six-story building, but I would imagine that there would be considerable resistance to that as well. And that's something that we would have to then consider through CUPs and all kinds of other regulation. And so they're sort of I guess I'd be very surprised to see a 3 or 4 story building pencil out on a parcel like this. And so, I'm not exactly sure what we're asking them for because we can't change the zoning. And so, we can move the windows around a bit, we can move the door around a bit, but I don't know what we're really going to get out of dragging this out any longer.
Commissioner Kranzer.
Thank you. Just a couple of specific points, and I look forward to the changes, hopefully. Just in regards to the entry at the corner of 27th and Hennepin, I would hate to have Metro Transit be blamed for not having the entrance on that corner. There is some flexibility with that transit shelter, and I can connect you with the people to talk to. When you look at transit shelters and their location of the bus stop, they vary by quite a bit around even uptown. So I don't think that's an impediment. If you look at the location of the parking lot and the sidewalk to where the corner is, it's almost dead flat, so there is no accessibility issues. The ADA code requires handicap parking to be closest to the entry where parking is provided. So if there's parking provided where it is, the handicap stalls need to be the closest to the entry of those parking stalls. So you might have the applicant argue about adjacency to the handicap parking stalls to entries. That's not really a code thing. It might be a preference. But in my read of the building code and accessibility code, that's not an issue. So I'd really encourage to make this very suburban project more urban as best the applicant can see it. Thank you.
Commissioner Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in response to Commissioner Magrino's question, and just so I'm very clear about what I expect to happen in the time that we're delaying this project, we could, I think, and I appreciate Commissioner Rockwell's assessment and his proposal for how to get a better design here. I think what we're asking for is the architecture team to design this building in a way that is more in keeping with the character of the community so that we do not have to design it ourselves through conditions of approval. So I just want to be very clear that that's what I hope will happen. And I think that's been voiced several times here. So no one expects a 6-story building back, but we do expect a building that is more in keeping with an urban design.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to continue this application to April 11th. Is there any further discussion? If there is none, clerk, please call the roll.
Bender?
Aye.
Gagnon?
Aye.
Kranzer?
Aye.
Lipke Peer?
Aye.
Magrino?
Aye.
Rockwell?
Aye.
Sweezy?
Aye.
Freeland?
Aye.
It's 8-0.
And that motion carries. That concludes our discussion on this item and also concludes our business for today. We have a committee of the whole this Thursday. Our next meeting is March 28th.